Hi everyone! So today I've been asked to go over a couple of basic wig skills of how to add or remove hair from a wig. Now, adding hair is particularly useful for big anime character hair like think Dragon Ball or big bouffants where you need quite a lot of hair fibres to actually make the shape. And removing hair is useful when a wig comes out too thick for what you want, such as some do these days, like this is quite a thick one. Now, for this example I'm using a lace front wig, which means that the hair is individually hand-tied into lace at the front. Typically these are used for kind of swept back styles so that you can't see the join, but a couple of these techniques are working for any wig. It's only so we can show ventilating and how to deal with that. So for the first method, I've got my hairdressing scissors here. I got these off eBay years ago and they're still going strong. They were under £5, I think. They're a pretty good investment. I've got my normal trimming scissors and also thinning scissors, where one is like a comb and one is like a blade. So by cutting, you take off only some of the hair. Now this is the method that hairdressers use to thin out hair. You can also use a razor for this, but I find it's a little more risky and you're likely to cut yourself. I actually had a hairdresser try that once on mine and he cut himself and bled all over me. I prefer the thinning scissors. So all you do for this is just get your hair nice and smooth and ready, and you want to grab a bit, start at the top, snip, snip, snip down, and you'll see that we've removed some of the hair, but not all of it. Now this will also shorten the overall length a bit, and so it might not be the ideal method, but I thought it's worth adding in because it is a useful method and it is the proper method. And this way you can take hair evenly from everywhere, remembering of course to lift up some hair and get some from below if you want to thin it out in the underlayers as well. It's a nice, quick, simple method and the scissors do all the work. You just have to take it slowly because it is a bit harder to add hair in once you've trimmed it out. And the second method we're going to cover is wefting. Now I'm sure you've all heard of wefting before. Basically, these are wefts. This is a little strip of net fabric with the hairs sewn into it. You can make these yourself. It is a bit time consuming, but it's easiest to buy them. They're quite cheap. They also come a lot longer than this, kind of 80 centimetres I think is the standard, and that means you can use them for pretty much any wig, but I've already trimmed these to the length of this wig. Generally I'd recommend trimming them after you've got them in. This was more happenstance. So, I'm going to get my nice hairdresser's clips, and if we pull up some of the hair here, you can see that the wig is actually made of lots of wefts all sewn in lines. So below that one, there's another one, and more and more and more. So if we want to make a wig thicker, it stands to reason we add more wefts in. Now, the proper way of doing this as such is to sew them in. You'll notice that on the wigs they are sewn in place. And you can do that literally just by pinning it into place. Either pin it along so that you can take the wig off the head and then sew it from the inside, or pin straight in just to hold it in place, and then get a curved mattress type needle or wig wefting needle, have a big hook one, or just go really carefully and just pick that up and go through all the way along and sew it in. However, I almost never do that. It is rather more time consuming than my preferred method, which is using impact contact adhesive. This is the best glue I have found for this. It is a nice flexible glue that dries mostly clear, a bit off-white, but it's not too bad. You'll want to get a little bead of glue along the weft, not too much, and it really doesn't need much for this. And then carefully, knowing that it will stick to your fingers a bit, put it in the gap between the other wefts and pin it in place. You have to pin through the fabric where the top is, where we put the glue. Pin it in place several points along it, and wait overnight for it to dry. Now, the benefit of this is you can weft a whole head wig in about an hour tops doing it this method. And you want to, I generally work from one end to the other. Once you've got one in, separate your hair out, put another in there, and keep going. Do use large ball-headed pins, I find best, because they're easier to fish back out, and sometimes I need to use pliers if the glue has grabbed the pin by accident. As a warning, this method will also destroy your wig head a little bit. In fact, I can show you. You might be able to see there are grooves where the polystyrene has been kind of eaten away by the adhesive. Don't try this on canvas wig heads or nice kind of flocked wig heads. It will destroy them, and they're a bit nicer. These are just cheap polystyrene ones that I keep for this. Now, in a similar way as we'll do on this half, it is very simple to remove wefts. So if we separate out up to there, I'll pin it down a bit flatter. Now we can see the little stitching there. And so all we want to do, you can do this from inside the wig if you want a better angle on it, but I thought this would help you see better. If you start to snip or rip the stitching, going carefully so as to not pull too hard on the actual net or straps that hold all of it together, because you don't want to break the actual interior part of the wig. And oh, it's sewed in quite well at the end here. And you just want to go along, and if you find you can't get the actual end out, you can just snip it off at the end and take that bit out, and then when you brush through you'll have, well, that much less hair in there. Now you don't want to remove too many in the same place, so obviously I've removed them here, left a bit of a big gap. I want to keep these two in place now, so I might even lift up the next two and then remove the one under that. So there's a gap, then two wefts, then I'll make another gap, then two wefts. You don't want to remove too much at one location, or it will start to look a bit thin in places. Again, the best way to do this really is before you've styled your wig, because you don't want to accidentally make any bald spots. This is particularly a problem with kind of undercuts or really short cuts. So typically at the back, if you want to cut it short for some styles, like I did for Super Saiyan trunks, you'll want to make sure that you're cutting it only to the length so that it hides the next weft below it. So if you go around removing wefts after that, it does cause a bit of a problem. And now the final method, and possibly the most involved really, is attacking the lace frontage and ventilating in hair. Now, this is a bit of an acquired skill. It does take a bit of learning. First you need, if you're adding, you need loose hairs. You can cut these out of a weft, or this wig used to actually be really long. I cut it off and I saved the offcuts for doing this. But you need a little handful of loose hair. You need to bend it over roughly equal so that you've got a loop. I recommend using far longer bits than this when you're actually doing this, by the way. Again, this is just what I happen to have in front of me. Then you need a ventilating needle, which comes in this little brass casing usually, and you can put different size needles in. They are actually, as I will try to put a picture up now, a very small barbed needle. They're quite nasty if you're jamming in your fingers, so be careful. Now what you want to do is you want to loop it through one of the little loops of the net, use it to grab one of the bits of hair that you're holding, and then just pull that hair back through the little loop that you've created, and that'll add a hair. So it is fiddly, so you need to pull the hair through but not get the needle caught on the lace. You need to not pull too hard so you don't break the lace. You need to not pull too hard or you can kind of frizz up the hair. And you need to get it back through that tiny little loop that you've made and pull it tight so that the loop stops it from going anywhere and it is secured into the wig. Like I say, it takes a little bit of practice to get the hang of it, but it is worth it if you want to, say, add more hair to a lace section or change the hairline. This is how, for example, if we wanted a widow's peak in this before I cut the lace, you know, you normally have the lace coming down further, you could ventilate in the hair to give the widow's peak effect. Now, as for removing hair, again, it's pretty much the same in reverse. So, if you want to remove hair from a lace section, you want to very, very carefully find the individual little hairs and unloop them. It is kind of fiddly. There we go. That's one out of thousands. It takes a while. There is the temptation, of course, and you can kind of get away with it if you want, just for a small section, to just trim it very short, which is obviously a lot quicker, but then you do still end up with that thickness at the root. You have to decide if you want it to just be thinner down at the bottom, or if you need it to actually be like a bald spot, because a bald spot will require you very carefully plucking out the individual hairs, and that is sadly just a matter of time and patience. Obviously, if you just wanted it to be a bit thinner in general here, this is where the thinning scissors come back in, because you can just chop some away and it'll just thin the whole area of hair that's coming from that. This is particularly important because on some wigs the lace section can be quite thick, so it's from here to here on this. So if I wanted it to be a bit thinner down here, it's still a lace section, so I might want to use the thinning scissors. Whereas if I was making a bald spot, I'll need to actually get in there and remove individual hairs. So I think that's about it. Add all the hair you need for doing spiking. Take hair away if you're maybe portraying an older character with thinning hair, or if just your hair is ridiculously thin in the ridiculously thick even in the wig that you've bought. And go slow. Wigs are a messy, difficult thing, and they're a completely different skill set to what most cosplayers are familiar with, I think. So go slow, take it easy, and just don't do anything that will be too hard to undo. And yeah, there you go. One last look inside. And you shouldn't pull it off so soon after gluing, by the way. But you can see in there's all the rows of stitching. That is probably the easier way to remove wefts if you're actually planning to take out just full wefts. Just get your tiny scissors or your D-picker and take it out row by row from inside. Pick a row, leave a row or two, pick another row, take it out. But if you're doing it this way, do remember to flip it back the right way round, get it on your wig head and check that you're not removing too much, because there's nothing worse than having to glue back in wefts that you've just picked out. Right, well, I hope everyone has best of luck making their wigs thicker or thinner, and catch you in the next video.